Brandon, really excited to be joined by Dr. Jamil Northcutt, who was a linebacker with the Ole Miss football team from 2000 to 2003. And I mean, his resume is so distinguished. Worked in the SEC league offices, was in player development with the Chiefs. He was here at Ole Miss in the athletic department, was with the Cleveland Browns, and now is vice president of player engagement with Major League Soccer, academic honor roll 4 times when he was here with Ole Miss. Jamil, you have such a distinguished resume. Not to turn this into a question about myself. I turned 30 this weekend. When did you realize you have your life in order? Because it seems like you had it in order at a much earlier age than I do.
No, man. It's all good. Sometimes you trip up on things and you fall up onto success. But that's been good. But one of the things I've learned now is not necessarily, accumulating all those different things. It's more about smelling the roses and making sure you're enjoying the journey. So appreciate the compliments, but it's been fun. There's a lot of people involved in everybody's success at the end of the day, so you can't get there alone.
You really took advantage of the academic side of things when you were here at Ole Miss. You earned 3 degrees from the University of Mississippi. What motivated you to attack academics with that gusto, and what kind of advice do you have for students and student athletes that are currently maybe getting their undergrad, pursuing postgraduate degrees, or like you did, going for your doctorate?
Yeah, it's about taking advantage of the resources. When I was a student athlete there, we would be there training anyway. And so you came in early. As a freshman, there's a lot of us in our 99 signing class, myself, Eli, Jesse, Mitchell, Von Hutchins. I remember we used to ride around in Von's car. He had the car. Him and Eli had the cars. And so we needed them to take us to and from practice. And so, or when we were training in the summer. And so you were taking a lot of hours anyway. So during those summer sessions, particularly, freshman year, sophomore year, et cetera, they kind of helped you get ahead. And so when you would get advised on campus by your advisor, you would see that you were making some headway academically in your core courses. And one of my advisors told me one time, he said, look, you're blazing the trail pretty much from a standpoint academically. You got a chance to get your master's before you graduate. So you need to look at trying to take advantage of that. So that's when it popped in my head that, okay, during this 5-year period, since a lot of that class in 99 redshirted, let me take advantage of taking more courses than I probably need to be. I remember one year I was taking about 19 hours. I don't know how I made it playing football and doing that at that time, but that's kind of how it happened. And so, I was able to finish my master's before, I left there the first 5 years that I was there. And then upon coming back, we had a benefit, that if you worked at the university for a number of years, you had a chance to get your degree paid for. And I'm all about being debt-free now. I like my money, and I like when other people pay for stuff for me. So there's nothing wrong with that. So I took advantage of that opportunity. You still have to enroll, you have to get in, interview, et cetera. And so being able to do that was something that I'm proud of, and I'm happy that I was able to get into those programs and finish those degrees.
We're looking at a Jamil Ramsey. He's debt free. That's what's up. So I got the privilege of working with you in athletics. We worked on a lot of projects together. But some of my fondest memories of working with you is us just sitting around talking shop, talking football, life, all of that. But you were involved in football in some aspect from, I'm assuming, Pee Wee all the way through Cleveland Browns, and then all of a sudden, like, I get, you get moved away, and we're doing different things and always on the move, and all of a sudden I get a notification, I want to say on like LinkedIn, where it said Jamil Northcutt, and then it said Major League Soccer, and I literally thought it was a typo. Like, I remember going and like looking and reading, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what is happening right now? So what? Obviously football your whole life. What made you kind of make that change, make that jump over to MLS?
Well, I'll use the term, I've been involved in sport my whole entire life.
That's right. You're right.
And so I love ball.
Yeah.
So it don't matter what ball it is. If we can throw it out there and play and compete, then I'm down with it. So I love competition. And so at the end of the day, football kind of led me to, where I am. You come across a lot of different people. I've had the privilege of being able to be in different venues and sectors and not necessarily be singular or tied down to one geographic region or location, and, working for a couple of NFL teams, I've worked at the NCAA office, you meet a lot of people who have the same connections to folks. And when the MLS opportunity came up, I was at the NCAA office in football development with that group. We were managed by Oliver Luck, obviously John Duncan, a guy by the name of Chris Howard as well, and Mark Hicks. And being on Oliver's team, so to speak, much lower than what he was, there was a connection there between Commissioner Garber, who was our commissioner here, and him. They go back to the NFL days. And so a lot of us have come through the NFL office. I served in the NFL office as Director of Football Administration as well. And so having some connections there, but I got connected to the opportunity through another colleague, and he was just like, hey, they need somebody to come and build out, this area that's dealing with the players. You would be the perfect person. And originally I was like, I don't necessarily know about this, it's a major shift or somewhat of a change, but I kept feeling that nudge, to go take a look at it. And so I did, and the rest is history. So here I am. But again, it's those relationships that you make along the way. It's been great. We're like a startup somewhat. We have been in existence. This year is our 26th year. Last year we turned 25. But the great thing about it is we've got so many new things coming down the line. We're getting ready to launch a new lower division league that we've announced coming up next year in 2022. We're continuing to expand our teams, we'll hopefully getting to 30 teams at some point in time. I know we'll be at 29 in 2023. And so it's a great opportunity. We've taken over the developmental academy system. So that US Soccer used to run. So now we call that MLS Next. So it's a lot of big projects that are going on that a lot of our ownership groups and owner operators are investing in the game. We're just seeing a tremendous growth. Our viewership is up. After the pandemic, it's just an exciting time to be in the sport. And then the one thing that I always tell people, you go from the number one game in America to the number one sport in the world. And so this is a global game. It's no matter when my wife and I travel out of the country, we don't see football up. We see soccer.
That's right.
We see, or actually, we don't see football up. We see football. Right. And so it is on every television around the world. And so, the World Cup's coming up in 2022. We got the World Cup coming to America, or to Northern America, in 2026. And so it's a lot of momentum going, and we're really excited about the rising tide that's coming our way.
We interviewed Coach Mai and Coach Thompson on this podcast a few weeks ago, and one of the things they talked about was just their fandom of different teams. And, Rob Thompson being a Man U fan from the time he was, could walk or speak.
Don't get it twisted. Man City, B-Hug.
I'm sorry, Man City.
That's important. That's an important distinction.
Can we edit that out? Because he'll get mad about that. But then Coach Mai, being relatively new to this fandom to Man U, I do remember that. And so did you what were the things you kind of learned? Because I don't know, we had never, and I'm just being completely transparent, you and I never had a conversation about Major League Soccer to my recollection. And so it wasn't like you were coming in weekly and going like, hey, the Galaxy, that's my team. So what was your fandom like kind of coming in, and then what is it now? And how much have you kind of learned in your, several years in MLS?
When you start thinking about fandom, when you work in the industry, it's somewhat different. So right. I've always been a student athlete, right? So I played the game. And so and then when I left college, I went on to work in the industry as well. I was at the Southeastern Conference. So you never really get a chance to really root for your team because you always have to be neutral.
Right. So that helps you develop an admiration more from a player attachment standpoint than it is from I'm rooting for this local team. Now, I want my high school team to do well. Tullahoma High School Wildcats. Those are my folks. They're actually undefeated right now. Should be top in the state of Tennessee. Shout out to them. Same thing when it comes to, the Rebs, Ole Miss. I want them to do well, undefeated, getting ready to head into this Alabama game. And so we want them to go ahead and do what they know how to do, which is get this dub.
and nobody's intimidated. Nobody's afraid. This is what we do. So you have a connectivity to the team that you play for. When it comes to looking at all the teams, I've always been in a situation where I've had to be neutral anyway. So, but working in the pros, you're always evaluating talent. And so you see everybody across the league, whether it's, quarterbacks, linebackers, different position groups, you're interviewing all these players to be a part of your team. And so when you're playing, obviously you want your home team to be successful, but you pretty much know all the league, and you don't really want anybody to do bad. So my approach to rooting for teams is somewhat different. I still root for my teammates, whatever teams they're playing on, people that I know within the industry, want them to do well because I know what the implications are as a result of results, right, or producing results. So that's what it is. So when I came into Major League Soccer, I'm coming into a league that I wasn't really familiar with. The familiarity that I had with it, though, and this is interesting. My first job, from leaving the Southeastern Conference was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And so Lamar Hunt was the owner of our team in Kansas City, the Hunt family. And so Lamar Hunt, he is one of the founders of MLS. So the Kansas City Wizards, or some refer to as the Wiz, were right there in our facility. They were at our training grounds. When I would bring in some concierge level types of services for our players, those players, Eddie Johnson and some of the other guys, were part of those clubs that played in Kansas City. So there was a familiarity there with the Kansas City Wizards there. So that was my first dose of MLS. So the fandom was not really there, but there was a familiarity with the sport. And obviously being in Ole Miss, we had a women's soccer program, being at the Southeastern Conference, my first championship that I ever did was the women's championship. And so Hurricane Ivan had blew through back in the day, and we were supposed to go to Orange Beach, but we ended up having to move that tournament to Auburn. So I've always had an affinity towards competition in sports, but the sport of soccer has always kind of been around my life, and I played soccer growing up. That was one of the first sports that I played aside from baseball and basketball. Before I started playing the other football, I played football or soccer, however you want to frame it.
Well, Brandon talked about this, but just an exciting time to be around MLS with expansion, whether it's Nashville, Austin, Cincinnati a few years ago, LAFC joined the league not that long ago and has already pushed towards the top of the table. You've got higher caliber coaches, players joining the league, celebrity ownership with guys like Will Ferrell, David Beckham, Yo Gotti, Brandon. Yo Gotti just signed
DC United.
DC United this week. I mean, the aura of the league, I think you started to hint at it with all the plans moving forward, but it feels like if you're going to get into Major League Soccer, now is the perfect time.
Yeah, you see the crossover, right? We got Kevin Durant with Philadelphia Union, Russell Wilson, Sierra, are part of the ownership group in Seattle. James Harden, with the Houston Dynamo. So it's a lot of folks. And then you got the crossover too with ownership. So some of our owners who own NFL franchises, they own clubs within MLS. And so, the Haslam family, I work for them in Cleveland. We've got the Wilf family just acquired Orlando City. They own the Minnesota Vikings, were part of the minority ownership group, a part of the ownership group in Nashville with John Ingram and Nashville SC. You got Arthur Blank, who's in Atlanta. And so, Atlanta United, if you haven't been to Atlanta United game, you guys need to check it out. That's close by. Go check it out. I mean, they average around 50 to 60,000 fans per game. So it's an electric atmosphere. It's a great opportunity to be there. And then obviously when you start looking at the Super Bowls too, we have out attendance to everybody, particularly within our championship games. So the Super Bowl was in Mercedes-Benz. We had our MLS Cup in Mercedes-Benz a few years ago, and we had more fans there in the stands for that particular event. So and then this weekend, it's El Tráfico. So it's LA Galaxy, LAFC. I'm actually headed out this weekend on Saturday to go be there for that game. We're actually, Landon Donovan is getting a statue erected of himself. So if you guys know about fandom, about the history of the league, Landon Donovan is one of the most decorated players in the United States. And so he's done well, not just on the field, but off of it as well with the San Diego team that he's owning and coaching and operating. So he's one of our North Stars, so to speak. And so we want to celebrate him with that team this weekend.
You know, the league just continues to grow, and that's you know, I think it's a testament to a lot of people just sticking with it. You know, early on in its kind of infancy stages, there was a lot of talk about, you know, will it work and all those things, and you know, in the youth leagues of America were just growing and growing and growing. Like I remember even when I was a kid, I never played, but I mean, they would actively recruit you. You know, if you had a buddy that was here or there, like they were coming for you and wanted you to you know, to play. And then I remember in high school, we had a kid that played all, you know, club teams and whatnot. And he went and tried out for, I want to say it was the KC team was the closest one at the time. And he went up and tried out, and, you know, we thought he was the best player ever. And, you know, he didn't even make like the second cut. And so it just showed the talent of, you know, what we thought is out there. And then all of a sudden you have this different level of talent, and you have these, you know, players that I'm sure from a personality perspective are all over the spectrum of that. And so that leads to my question of, you know, what does your role entail on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month, on a yearly, on a, you know, an extended, you know, 5 years, whatever. So what is your role if I'm telling, you know, my wife who's going to ask tonight, you know, how's Jamil doing? And, you know, what's he do? And, you know, I want to nail it on the head. This is what Jamil does. Hit me.
Yeah. So in short, our mission is to engage and equip players with strategies to succeed. And so, you know, the players are pretty much the centerpiece of the league. And so the target audience of the folks that we focus on, I talked about the MLS Next group. Again, you're looking at players, the range of age when it comes to our players is around 15. You know, we got pros that are 15 years of age. So think about that, coming into a professional locker room at 15. Our oldest player, I'll throw this out here, is probably 40, anywhere from 38 to age 40. And so, young. You know, yeah, absolutely. You know, so you're looking at young, but that's a big range of guys who are continuing to play in your league. You know, when it comes to what we do, you know, we get them at a very, very early age. So there has to be some type of mechanism that allows them to be at their best, or to reach their goals and to reach their highest potential. When we talk about player engagement and kind of what we do in our player and competition relations area, we're basically talking about transition. So the academic definition of transition, which is birthed out of transition theory, is any event or non-event that results in these changes in relationships, assumptions, roles, and routines. We all experience transitions in life. B-Hud, you got married a few years ago. You've since then had a couple of children. So that's a major event in your life. It's a change. You know, sometimes we change jobs. Sometimes we lose jobs. I've been a part of that before too. You know, so that's a drastic change. We think about the player experience. They're getting traded to different places. They're getting married. They're having families. You know, sometimes they don't make the team. Am I going to stick with it? Am I going to continue? It could be graduating from school, continue your education, et cetera. So all of these transitions are part of life. And obviously relationship is key to the transitions that they make. So what we do in a nutshell, if you apply that theory into practice, is we're an asset to our players to kind of help them deal with some of the liabilities. You know, we provide support, we give them strategies, we help them look at themselves, you know, in what they're doing, and we also help them evaluate situations in a way that helps them kind of bridge the gap between where they are now and kind of where they want to go. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we do, but we do that holistically. So kind of some of the programs that we put in place for the players to succeed, we call our 7 C's. And so we look at cognition. That's really about continuing education. We know that there are prerequisites to getting a job in our country. We also have to look at it from a DEI lens, from a diversity standpoint. because we got players that are represented from over 70 countries in our league. So any programming that we do, we have to make sure that these things are translated in English, Spanish, and French. So that's a whole different layer of kind of what we have to deal with. So when people are coming from different countries, they have different values and core systems, et cetera. So we have another C is character. So we start looking at character. What's your core values? Where do you come from? How are you defining yourself? How are you behaving? What can you do in this country that is not allowed in your country, or what is allowed in your country that may not necessarily be allowed in this country? Because again, we're really trying to position you for success. We've got career development services that we offer our players, because we want them to start getting some professional experiences. So when they transition, they're good. We know that 100% of all players will experience career termination. It don't matter what sport you play. We know that the average playing career in pro sports is around 4 to 5 years. But if you're in the MLS, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, you're looking at a 4 to 5 year period of being able to play this game. So your time is very, very valuable. What you do with it is going to lead to other opportunities, how you communicate with people and connect with folks. We've got a care area, which is another C. That's really your mind, body, spirit, mental health, mindfulness, meditation. What resources are we providing for our athletes to deal with the pressures of being a professional athlete? Because a lot of people don't realize, and now it's becoming more and more common. It used to be taboo. If you're talking about mental health, right, then something's wrong with you, et cetera. But that stress and that anxiety and pressure has always been there for athletes. The need to be perfect, the evaluation, you're under constant critique all the time as an athlete. So those services are very critical. We launched our MLS Greats Network, which is our official alumni group of Major League Soccer. And that's kind of under our area of connection. That's really, really important. We always want our players to feel like they're welcome. We want to collaborate with them and build a community so that we can help advance the game and grow soccer in North America, and not just in North America, but around the globe. I'm thinking of some other C's that I may be leaving out right now. Currency. So Currency is another C. That's our financial education, financial literacy platform. So all of these things help us provide, holistic development for our athletes. And that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day in a nutshell. But there's other areas too, strategic partnerships, making sure that we're connected with the right entities. There's training around administrative and different laws in our land, working with our legal folks and other entities. There's a player marketing side to what we do and connecting. So for instance, what you do on a day-to-day basis at your job and getting corporations and companies, for me, is how can we make those connections between those corporations and companies and our players, whether they be player activation types of opportunities, players working within our social responsibility area with Jan Greenberg and her group. But how can we make sure that we're bridging the gap, making sure that the players have opportunities to succeed, not only now, but beyond? Like that's kind of in a nutshell what we do on a day-to-day basis. And then, it's just, we me, Brandon, I like to be creative. So
I'm going to need to put this in a PowerPoint so I can give it to my wife, because I didn't take any notes on that.
I like to be creative. So man, I might think of something tomorrow to do. So, but that's part of the role. That's the exciting piece about it. It's dealing with people, which is something that I enjoy doing and helping them grow and achieve their goals and their dreams, man. There's nothing greater feeling for me than to help somebody achieve something that they want to do and to see them, see that manifest.
That's great. And I think you've said it before that you have a lot of freedom in this role. And I think that's the unique thing for you with your background is having that, that freedom and that ability to kind of mold it how you feel like it should fit and work. And I know you're taking in, other opinions and whatnot, but I think at the end of the day, having that freedom to be able to really kind of mold your own program as you go along, I'm sure it feels like a success.
Yeah, it's been great. We've got great leadership here too. You can't do it alone. And so from our commissioner down to Mark Abbott, the area that I'm in, to Todd Durbin, who's our EVP in our player and competition relations area. We've got Joanne Neal, who hired me upon coming in before switching over to a different group, to even Gary Stevenson, he's just electric. He's been all over the place from a standpoint of working in different leagues, starting different things. So he's been instrumental in the things that we're doing. So I'm in a good place. I got some good folks, great support, and then you kind of got like this runway. We're not done. And so it's just a lot of things that we can do with this league to help it grow and develop and to continue to build more fans like you guys. So hopefully you guys will get a chance to hit me up, come out to a game and experience what MLS is all about.
Well, you're so detail oriented and busy with this time of year. How often during this overlap of some primetime soccer matchups in the country are you able to watch the Ole Miss Rebels play?
Yeah, man, that's the everyday, that's a Saturday thing that we do. My son, and if you look behind me, let me turn this way.
Oh,
it's never lost.
Look how big that face is.
That's what it is.
That,
you actually
tiny. Jamil had that like this one.
And I'm gonna tell you, when I play, you actually can hit people and not get a flag. But nowadays, hey man, this thing is turning soft, man. It's hard to watch. I can't lie to you. It is really hard to watch. Like I hope we can get into the conversation about this too. I really don't like how we penalize a kid, but then we kick them out of the game. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, do you not know from a physiological, and that's not even the right way. Let's talk about anatomy. From an anatomy standpoint, your head is connected to your shoulders. So if I lower my shoulders, my head is going to naturally be lowered. And nobody penalizes the running back for lowering his head, ever. They change the contact zone all the time. And it drives me nuts, to be quite honest with you. When I'm watching a game and I see a player hit somebody hard, make a great tackle, and because the running back lowers his head and there's head-to-head contact, we kick a kid out of a game. So let me dive into this a little bit more. If you guys would allow me to opine.
Look, this is I think we're on the wrong podcast. Did you log into the wrong? I know you got doctor in front of your name, but we don't know anything about it. But go ahead, you do you.
Yeah, if you allow me to opine just for a second. Just to my colleagues and just different venues, like we got to look at changing the rules. I mean, you think about a football schedule. You've got 12 games, 11 to 12 games in college. In basketball, you probably have, 20 to 30. Baseball, you're going to play over 40. Like, you don't really have a lot of opportunity for any errors. You're training all year as a student athlete. You get in a game, you make a mistake, inadvertent, right? And then your family's traveling to the game, you've worked all year, and then they're going to kick you out of the game.
Right.
Like, we've got to look at the rules and change that, because it's just not good, that you kick a kid out of games.
Like the flagrant, like the NBA does a flagrant 1, flagrant 2. Like if you get the penalty, like you got basically had 2 chances, you get it twice, now you got to go. But not
or soccer. Time.
Right.
Or soccer. Give them a yellow card.
Yeah.
It's a yellow card. You've already penalized, but now we're throwing kids out of a game in the first quarter. And these are big games. And again, this is where when I start talking about club attachment, player attachment. People come to see the players now. We're not here to see the referees. We're not here to see me administrate, or Brandon administrate, or Seth administrate. We want to see the game.
Right.
We want to see the best players on the field play the game. And so that's what we got to get back to. These kids are not making egregious fouls, and if they are, they'll be found out. They're trying. You see kids when you watch the game, they're really trying to hit with their shoulders, take their head out of the game. Hey, we made the point. But kicking kids, disqualifying them from the game, that burns me up a little bit, just because I know the preparation that goes into a season. And if I'm going to get kicked out of a game for making a bad tackle or inadvertent tackle, I know I'm trying not to do that, because you work too hard just to get there. You're not guaranteed to make the bus, the 85 now.
Yeah.
You got to work all year long to go through spring practice, the 4 phases that we used to talk about in football. Like, so we've got to do something differently to protect those athletes and keep them on the field, versus saying, hey, you know what, you made a mistake, we're just going to disqualify you and not give you another chance. There's many ways to skin this cat. We talked about soccer rules and yellow cards and red cards. Maybe it's the NHL rules, penalty box. Maybe it's the NBA flagrant fouls. But kicking kids out of games, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, I did not expect.
And you get a penalty.
I did not expect.
And you got a penalty. We'll give you 15 yards, and we're gonna kick you out of the game. See ya.
I didn't expect them this route. That's amazing. That's such good insight for the defensive side of the ball now. But you're a Tennessee guy. You have 3 degrees from the University of Mississippi. You worked here in the athletic department where you were helping set up Rebels that came after you for success. Clearly, this university means a lot to you as you continue to keep up with it, even with your busy life. Just talk about that. What does the University of Mississippi mean to you, Jamil?
Yeah, well, I got a beautiful wife who I met there. And so a lot of people talk about what schools mean. That's a big deal, and I've got lifelong friends. I met a lot of lifelong friends there. I never forget. So Jesse will probably kill me for talking about this. The first day, I got a lot of stories.
We already had Jesse, so you're good. He can't rebuttal. We already had him.
I remember the first kind of summer workout that we had as freshmen, and him, and Marcus Woodson, he's coaching at Florida State now, and condolences to his family. He just lost his brother too. So you guys say some prayers for him and his family. But I never forget the first summer workout that we had. Those guys were like in the group ahead of us. And I think myself and Vaughn, a couple other guys, we rolled over. We were getting ready to change our clothes to get ready to do our run. I remember coming into because as freshmen, they used to put you in the upstairs locker room. So we were upstairs. I remember coming in, going to my locker to change to get ready for this run or whatever. And Jesse and a couple of guys were on the floor. Oh, it's so hard. They were winded and gasped. And so we had to get dressed because it was hot, man. That's back in the day, used to practice in the sun. They didn't take care of it like they do now.
That's
the story. Yeah, absolutely. And then I forget, the day that I came in for orientation and I ran into Romero and they were having Pascal. He couldn't participate in this because he had class late that evening. And he said, Jamil, what you doing here? I was like, man, I'm here for orientation. He said, man, why are you out here right now? And so I looked at him. I said, hey, man, I'm just trying to take it in, getting ready to get my mind right for what we're getting ready to get into. And he said, hey, man, go back to your room. Enjoy all your time. He said, because you're getting ready to give your life away. and he wasn't kidding. He was not kidding there. But great relationships, great people. Like I said, I met my wife. Great friends and a lot of my teammates. You never forget that locker room feel and what that was like, all of the wars that you go through with each other. And you're developing as a young person. Some of the leadership opportunities that I had, which led me down the path of getting into sports administration, was just good, with some of our leaders that we had that were there. And so, it's a great experience. The fraternity that I play is Kappa Alpha Psi. Shout out to them. And so just, again, lifelong friendships, great campus community. We came back this summer. We got a chance to see that. And, when my kids, my son and my oldest daughter, Kellen and Layla, were born in Mississippi. And just the affiliation that we had with the university, working there in administration, it's amazing how their fandom has continued. Like they love the university and they want to see it do well.
Well, you gave us a few playing stories there, but I want to ask 2 questions, and when we're trying to keep this, keep it tight. So I need you to go quick because you and I could talk all day about this. Who are some guys you still keep in touch with that like on a daily or weekly basis from your playing days? And because I've heard you talk about so many times about relationships and you talked about your fraternity just now, but the thing that I learned being around the baseball program as even a student manager is that's essentially a fraternity of guys that you have those friendships for the rest of your life because of just the time that you were here, the things that you went through. But who are some of the guys that you still keep in touch with, like I said, on a daily or weekly basis from your playing days?
Yeah, Trey Starlins is a really huge friend of mine, probably one of my best friends. And he was in a class that was lower than mine.
Yeah.
But he also plays the frat that we did, but we kind of connected. We've always stayed in touch. And I pretty much talked to them. I talked to Trey at least 3 or 4 times a week. And if you guys don't know about Trey's the social commissioner for Conference USA. So he'd be somebody good to have on your show, just to kind of talk about his career path and journey. Played in the league. You know, when Trey got drafted into the NFL, I talked to him and his family on the phone. I was at the draft table in New York City, filled out his draft card and turned it in. So we kind of got a deep relationship. You know, we were together in Kansas City. Our families are closely connected. Jesse Mitchell's another person that I talk to. And it's a lot of guys too, you know, Eddie Strong. I don't talk to him every day, but we're kind of on Facebook and in just different groups. You know, Lanier Goethe, I talked to him several times. And that's just a good friend of mine. I got some funny stories about Lanier too. Wood, we talked about Marcus Woodson as well. And, you know, B. Brown is the defense coordinator at Louisville. You know, he was one of the younger guys that's there. Patrick Willis, we still keep in touch. You know, it's just a lot of folks. You know, if anybody hits me up, they know that they'll get a response back from me. So I'm not one of those guys. If you hit me up, I don't get back with you. So. And
lastly, you talked about your family, and I know Kim well, and you know, you're seeing Kellen a couple months ago when you were in town, and just remembering him being born in Oxford, and just this little Jamil clone, and now I mean he's, you know, I mean the kid's out there throwing balls and you know working his way into a good defensive linebacker. But talk about your family really quick. I mean, what do you guys do? I was joking with Kim. I was like, you know, do you guys even have a yard now? Like you're in the city. But she's like, no, we're in New Jersey. We're on the other side. We live in Newark. But just talk about them and kind of, you know, what you guys do, where you are in life and all that really quick, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so my wife and I, we just celebrated 15 years of marriage, so we're proud of that. So
being that's 6 years in, that is a feat. That is a feat within itself.
Yeah, so that's a big deal, and we're looking forward to many more. You know, we're definitely a team because we got 4 little ones. So Kellen, Layla, Mackenzie, and Ava. Kellen's 11, Layla is 8, Mackenzie's 5, and Ava's 3. So we are all over the place. So you talk about what we do. So like even with me being able to travel out of town this weekend to go to a game, generally I try to take the last flight out a lot because I get a chance to see their activities. So, you know, Kellen's in football, he's playing basketball, he does soccer, you know, whatever, if it has a ball in it, he's in it. You know, my daughters, they play soccer, they swim, you know, we'll probably get them in basketball and some other different things this year. So generally our weekends and weekdays are filled with running them around to just different events. And so you talk about being fans of teams, they're little league teams and teams that they're on, that's who we're rooting for. I lose my voice at the games. And a lot of times, you know, I got a chance, you know, particularly during this pandemic, I got a chance to coach my son's basketball team this year, which was great. And so we're generally spending our time giving back to the community. And it's just not him, it's other kids that you're around and their families and being able to fellowship with them. So, you know, we generally, you know, we spend family time with each other. You know, just last night, you know, we make sure that they are going to be grounded and rooted, you know, in some good core values. You know, we read Proverbs to them before they go to bed.
There you go.
Just so they understand how to have some wisdom, and at least hopefully they can take something away with them, you know, when they leave our house. Again, we don't really have that much time with my oldest. I mean, he's 11, but 6 years will go by just like that, and he'll be out of the house. So just trying to get them ready for life is kind of what we do. And then, you know, we make sure we date each other, you know, so, you know, got to make sure you keep things fresh, alive, and keep pursuing each other in your relationship. And just, again, it's really about, you know, stopping and smelling the roses, you know, making sure that each day that we get up, you know, training our kids and continue to keep ourselves on the path where we look at the glass being half full and appreciating what we have. This pandemic, one of the things it's taught us all is that there's a lot of foolishness going on in the world that can get us distracted, and being able to approach the day with the mentality that we're going to win and we're going to get the victory, and that what can we do to help, but also having a mindset of gratitude about what we have and not what we don't have, and being appreciative of the people that we get a chance to meet and connect with, and making a difference in other people's lives that's kind of how we spend our time. You know, we're involved in our church, the Life Christian Center, that's here in West Orange, New Jersey, which is where we live. And so, yes, we have a yard. We have a basketball goal in our driveway. We get it in now. We're always playing ball, doing something, you know, working out, taking care of our bodies. We're living life just like everybody else.
That's awesome, Jamil. And you've been so gracious with your time today. Really enjoyed getting a chance to dive deep on a handful of topics, whether it's Major League Soccer or football becoming different from the way you played it. Like I said, didn't anticipate going down that path, but
the targeting penalty.
Yeah, we're excited to get you back to Oxford soon, bringing your family back down, and looking forward to getting a chance to meet you in person. Thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. We look forward to coming down. There's a lot of executives in our office. They want to make it down to the Grove. So I've told them I'm going to bring them down at some point in time. So B-Hub, when I hit you up,
hit me up. I know
Deerfield and Company, take care of us.
Let's go. All right. Thanks again, man. We really appreciate it. Always good talking to you. Like I said, we can
all right, guys. Thank you. You guys take care, man. Have a great day. Good luck. Go Rebs this weekend.
That's right. Hotty toddy.